Hi, welcome back. This is section 2 of the course Programming with ECMAScript 2015. We're going to be looking at how to handle data in ECMAScript 2015. In this section, some of the things that we're going to be looking at are variables and scopes in JavaScript, destructuring, handling parameters, template literals, number and math features, some of the new features that are available in number, object, and math, string features, what are the new features available in string, and then we're going to end by looking at a new feature called as symbols. As part of the first video in this section, we'll be focusing our next couple of minutes on variables and scopes in JavaScript. In this video, some of the things that we'll be taking a closer look are scopes in JavaScript, new variable declaration using let and const, and finally we end up understanding when to use what, const versus let versus var. Let's understand scopes in JavaScript. In JavaScript, the functions and objects are all variables. So what is a scope? Well, scope is nothing but the variables, the function, the objects you have access to at any point of execution. Everything is function scoped, as we say in JavaScript, meaning if you declare a variable, its scope is the function. So variables declared inside a function become the local variables, and the local variables have local scope, meaning these variables cannot be used outside of that particular scope. And you also have this concept of global variable. If you declare a variable in JavaScript without the keyword var, it's automatically, as we call it, as hoisted or hoisting by the JavaScript compiler, meaning it goes to the global scope and available to any further functions. Basically, these are the variables which are declared outside a function. At this point of time, let me introduce you to a new tool. This is a freely available tool online. It's called as jsbin.com. It stands for JavaScript bin. You can use this utility to quickly create your JavaScript or HTML or CSS and then see the output of whatever you're writing. For this introductory course on variables and scopes, I'll be using JSBin, and then instead of using the HTML, CSS, all these tabs, I'm going to just remove the HTML, and then I will have just the JavaScript, and I will have the console and then not the outputs, so that we will do a console.log and then we will see on the console here. In order to understand the scoping, first let's create a variable. So I'm going to say var global var, and then let's give it a string of I am global. And next what I'm going to do is create a function foo. Inside the function foo, I will create a var bar, and I will say this is I am local, right? And then we're going to invoke the function. And then what we're going to do is we'll do console.log, and we will say global var, and also we will do console.log bar. Let's see if we can able to get access to that. And then I know it's going to error out, so in order to show that it will error out, what I'm going to do is encapsulate this in a try catch and catch that exception that it's going to throw, and we will do the console.log of the exception just to understand what is happening here, right? So let me run this, and it says I am global, and then it says object.error. So well, I can do ex.message and take a look at what it is. So if you see here, we were able to we declared the global var, we declared the function, but the bar was inside this function called as foo, and we invoked the function. Well, doesn't matter, nothing happens, it just declares that variable. And then I'm able to get the console.log of global var, which is I am global, but I'm not able to access this variable bar, and it says bar is not defined. That's because the moment you declare this variable inside a function, the scope is that function. You cannot access it outside of that function. Now, here's another interesting tidbit that if you are a JavaScript programmer, if I declare just bar and then I assign this I am local, now notice what happens. I will be able to get I am local. Well, this is what we call as hoisting, meaning the moment you declared a variable without the keyword var, what JavaScript is going to do is it's going to move this declaration to the top. It is as if we did var bar. So it's undefined at that line number 2, but the moment we called the function foo at line number 6, it gets assigned, and then I'm able to now go and then say console.log bar. So it gets hoisted to the global space, and then you are able to get that. Now that we have understood what scoping is all about, let's concentrate on the new way of declaring variables, which is let and const. These are the two new things that have been introduced in ECMAScript 2015 for declaring variables. Now, taking a look at let, it's very similar to var. You used var to declare a variable. Similarly, you will use let to declare a variable. But the main difference is, remember, var was function scoped, whereas the let is a block scoped variable declaration. So that means the variable declared using the let keyword is available within only that block where it was declared, not even the function. Now coming to the constant, it's basically a keyword which is used to declare a new variable similar to let, but the variables declared need immediate initialization, and the value that you provide to the variable cannot be changed in future. Next, let's quickly take a look at the let and const from a coding demo perspective. I'm back again in the JS bin, and what I'm going to do is quickly show you the concept of let, or how do you use let to declare a variable. Let's assume we create a function swap which accepts two parameters x and y. The idea is to swap them if x is greater than y, so swap it and then return the value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first check if x is greater than y. If yes, remember the algorithm that we all know for swapping. We take a temporary variable and then we store it, and then we use that to swap the numbers. So I'm going to do let temp is equal to x. So I'm just using a temporary variable and giving the value of x. Then I will say x is equal to y. Then I will say y equals temp, right? So now, in order to showcase that let is a block scope, meaning between this block, the scope of temp is only there, and you cannot access it outside of that blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of try catch to showcase that yes, we do not have the access to temp outside of that block. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to check if temp is equal to x or not, and then I will do a catch, and we will do a console.log of that exception message to just make sure what is happening. And then of course I'm going to return an array or whatever, and then I'll do xy, right? So now in order to use this, what we will need to do is we will need to call the swap function. So I will say swap, and I will say 3, 2, and let's run it and then see what the console gives us. Well, take a look at what I'm getting. It says temp is not defined. So where did we access the temp? We accessed the temp outside of this block, and naturally in ECMAScript 2015 the variable scoping is basically a block scope when you do the let. Now you may be asking, like, what will happen if I do a var here instead of a let, right? So you will be surprised to see the output. So I'm going to say var temp is equal to x, and let me run this. And now notice here it says false. So that's because when you use temp, remember what I said in the previously, the variable declaration var will hoist variable to the starting of the function. So this is typically what a JavaScript compiler will do. Although you said var temp, this is actually done like this. The declaration goes to the top of this function. So that's where I declared the var, and then now this line typically becomes as if like you're using the temp. So that is why the temp is now a function scope that's available through this whole function. So that is why when I said temp is equal to x, and then I come back here and then do what happened to the temp, it is saying false or whatever, but the variable temp is available outside of the block. So now let's get back to let. And as you can see now, what happens is it will say that temp is not defined because, well, the scoping is now a block scope. I hope you understood what let will allow you to do when you use the let keyword to declare a variable. Let's now take a look at the concept here. So I'm going to just wipe off whatever I had. So let's say we want to create, or we want to go calculate the area in a circle, right? So we all know it is pi r square, and then we know pi is a constant value of 3.14. So how do you represent that, right? So now what you can do is you can just say pi, const pi is equal to 3.14, and then I can come in here and then do a function area, and I'm going to pass its radius. And I will just say return pi star radius star radius. It's pi r square. And I'm going to just call this area function to a console.log, and I will say area2, and let's clear the console and we will run this. Well, it happily says 12.56, so area of a circle whose radius is 2 is 12.56. What if we go and then do something stupid, and that is, let's say we want to change the value of pi to 3.15, hypothetically, just assume we want to do that. Not that it is the right one, but just for the proving a point here that you cannot change the value of a constant in the future after you have declared it. So that's what I'm trying to show here. So I'm going to clear this console and then I'm going to run this. Well, how many times I click here, I'm not seeing anything in the console. That's because the compiler is actually throwing up an error, and then the way I can see that is by going through the developer tools. So I'm pressing on Control F12, function F12 or whatever function keys on your keyboards. So notice here, I'm going to clear this and then I'm going to click run again. And notice here it says unknown line number 7, pi is read only. So that's what I meant. Since I've declared constant pi is equal to 3.14, so now the pi variable cannot be changed value in the future. So if I do var pi 3.14, well, you will see the value coming up. It says 12.6, which is very absurd. You cannot do that, right? So now you at least understand, where you can use constants wherever you have a situation wherein you don't want to change a value of a variable in future. Whatever you have declared, the declared time, whatever the value it contains, you just need that. What you can do is you can use the const keyword and then do that. So now let's do this. So now we happily see 12.56. So that's constant concept for you. Hope by now you have understood the differences between var, let, and const. So the question that might be popping in your head is when to use what? Well, I would say use const whenever variable never changes the value. That means you have a constant and then it doesn't change its value, so use it. You prefer const. Prefer let when initial value changes later on. So you have declared a variable and then you need to increment the value of that variable, or you want to change the value of the variable, I would say use let. And completely avoid var. If you're doing ECMAScript 2015 based coding, you should use let and const. But if you have a legacy code and then you slowly kind of refactoring it and you still see var, that calls for a closer look at the code and then be careful while refactoring. So that's my verdict. Use const or let, avoid var. To quickly summarize this video, we looked at the scopes in JavaScript, a new variable declaration statement or keyword, let and const, and also understood when to use what.